And this is what, Friday morning? Friday morning, and we're leaving
Friday
the
morning.
UK in a moment and moving to that part of Ireland, which foolishly left the United Kingdom just about 100 years ago to greet that foreigner, Pat McGart. How are you, Pat?
Morning, Jude. That's grand. Well, actually, my usual weather update is actually quite nice this morning. It's actually very warm.
Tis nice. Well, I wouldn't say warm, but it is nice here too.
Yeah.
Would you recognise that description if you as a foreigner? And,
absolutely, yes.
Foolishly leaving the warmth of Mother England.
The motherland or the mothership, yes, absolutely. We're living in the free part of Ireland, I should say.
You're in it. What about being? Isn't it priest-ridden there? Is there much?
No, that day is long gone.
So no priest riding anymore.
No, not to my knowledge.
Perhaps you're not well informed. Anyway, enough of that. Let's go to the things it says in the papers today and over the last week or so. First one we're going to look at very briefly. It's a sort of a sad tale. It's in the RTE News, I find it, and they say that Apple is going to check anybody who tries to upload to iCloud images of child abuse. And that's seen as a progress because obviously nobody of sound mind and decent, even half civilized morals would approve child abuse or assisted. Do you think this is a good move or an important move in the?
I remember being in America and seeing on the back of milk cartons, child lost and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, Jude, I remember years and years ago. I just had young kids, and I remember watching a program on BBC. I think it was over about 2 nights. I know my first name is Stephen. It was a true story of a wee fella who was snatched by a paedophile back in America in the 60s and 70s. And I couldn't sleep. I really genuinely couldn't sleep. It really got to me big time. And anyway, I remember thinking afterwards, hey, see, child abuse, it must be the worst crime because it destroys families and it destroys the children and destroys everything. So, Jude, anything that Apple or anybody else can do to prevent child abuse, I am all in favor. Now, I know there are some people saying this gives Apple a lot of possible snooping, the freedom of speech, and they could start because of whatever way this is going to be done, it gives them the ability to snoop into other things. But look, Jude, see at the end of the day, if it stops child abuse, I don't have a big issue with it.
I think I would differ with you a bit, Pat, on this question. People often say this. They say it about rape as well, that it's the worst possible crime. I wouldn't see it as a worst. I would see it as a vile and disgusting and horrible crime. Terrible thing to do to a human being. But if somebody killed my child, I think I would see that as.
Jude, but that's I take your point. Of course, I do that, and it's a fair point. But I think that's. Would it be unfair to say that goes without saying?
You see, the thing is, the reason I raise it is when people misinterpret these things. I knew you wouldn't, but people misinterpret these things. If you say, "Well, actually, I don't think child abuse is the worst crime," they automatically then say, "Oh, geez, this guy says child abuse is okay." They start reading into the words you use. Totally different meanings.
Yeah, I know. Jude, I was on Highland Radio many years ago, and there was a terrible car crash in Donegal. And I remember saying, there was an old man killed and a whole lot of young people killed. And I was thinking of myself rather than, and I said, someone, it's terrible about the older man dying, but it's a terrible tragedy about the loss of so many young lives. What I meant was, look, hey, the other guy, I think might have been in his 60s, which was about near enough the same age I was at the time. And I said, right, I've lived my life. I've had my kids. I've had my marriage. I've had my career and all the rest of it. Now, that's not dismissing or anything the value or the sanctity of his life. But when somebody's 16 or 17 or 18, or whatever it is, and all the years they have to live and the experiences, and their parents to watch them to grow up and all that sort of stuff. And it can be misinterpreted. I was not at any stage sort of saying anybody's life was meaningless or it was okay that he should die or anything. But the number of people piled in to have a go was unbelievable. And I thought, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. Anybody with a reasonable mind would have copped on what I was trying to say, because I wasn't sort of saying, oh, this is wonderful, he's dead, they're alive.
But, but you weren't, from what you've told me, you weren't trying to say it. You had said it. It was the people who had picked you up on it. And I mean, I personally, do you think those people were sincere when they attacked you, or were they sort of on some kind of a bandwagon that would find fault with those who wouldn't?
Well, Jude, I think I've told you before. On one other day I was on, and I said there was a thing about it was shortly after the recession, and there was a massive big roads contract not too far from where I live now. And there was a northern company involved, and anyway, somebody rang in and said, with all the job losses and the unemployment in the building trade and the various trades, why is it a northern company got this huge contract and all the rest of it? And I remember saying, I used the term, I'm a bit schizophrenic about that. The best person should get the job, and whoever made the best tender and so on. And I remember somebody came back and says, I actually remember the presenter actually apologized for my use of the word schizophrenic. And I actually took exception to that. It's a legitimate word, and it wasn't being pejorative. I was just someone saying, some days I agree with it and some days I don't. Like, how do you explain that in a better way? It's a term that's used, so in other words, I wasn't sort of on two minds about it. I didn't see it, I didn't mean it in a sort of, a cheap way or anything like that. It was just a use of a word. So
go, sorry, Pat, you finish.
No, it's somewhat, I think people look to be offended, in a way that wasn't intended.
Well, I would classify them as sort of thought police. They go around figuring out what it is that you're thinking in their opinion, and then they hammer you. The terrible danger of that is you start getting impatient, and then you say, for example, let's take the child abuse thing, which is, needless to say, horrible. And somebody says, and if you say, well, I think it's not the worst crime, there is a worse crime, and that would be kill or torture or whatever. When people keep at you and say, oh, you obviously approve of child abuse, or you're lax on your condemnation of it, you get to the point where you say, what the hell with you, and you almost abandon the cause. Before that, you would have approved. Anyway, let us get back to, do you feel it's good in the fight? Well, now, in the article I read, I think this was in Irish Times, there was some misgivings some people had. And I must say, to some extent, I share them. Now, these images of child abuse are only noticed whenever the person tries to upload them to iCloud. If they sit on their phone, they can't be. They're not. They're not aware.
No, they're not recognizable.
The fact is, it sounds to me as if Big Brother is watching. And usually I say, well, the hell, it's hard keeping your privacy online. But then I start to think, Big Brother, Apple, knows who I meet and what I say and where I go. I begin to get. That really is straight from 1984.
Oh, Jude, and there's no doubt about it. Jude, sometimes when I'm doing doing the wee promo for our podcast, I notice the predictive text automatically nearly says what I'm going to say next, and that is frightening sometimes. When it, myself and Jude Collins will be discussing these issues. By the way, the minute I myself and the next line, they almost write automatically, and you're going, Jesus, that is frightening. And it's not that, Jude. I was down in Mayo a couple of weeks ago, and I remember after it came out, I got a sort of thing, did you enjoy your cup of coffee type thing and I thought, wait a minute, that actually just told me where I was, So
you get the feeling.
My brother-in-law has this theory, Jude, he doesn't carry his phone with him anywhere. He says, I want my life to be private. And he says, when privacy is gone, that is when people will recognize how important it was.
It's a terrible balancing act. I see what he means exactly. But then you're depriving yourself of your phone, and very often you need your phone, sometimes for emergencies, sometimes for very important meeting or whatever. So most of us will carry our phone because that's the idea of having it as a pocket phone, as they say.
No, Jude, when you think about how many mobile phones are in the world, can they monitor us all?
So I think they'll put you at the top of the list, Pat, me after you. Anyway, there is a case to be made for saying, I tried to think of a metaphor, and I thought that maybe you could say that child abuse is the crowbar that gains entrance into our private world. Apple and company. But on the other hand, I think they're doing good in terms of.
But it's back to that phrase you use, it's a balancing act.
Yeah. And I must say, to be honest, maybe I'm being foolish, but I tend to opt for saying, if they're going to invade my private life, invade away.
I'm much the same, there's not much to invade in my case.
But they missed you by about 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, go to our second item. And this one I found in Forbes magazine, but I'm sure it's in lots of others. And you alerted me to it as well. The US soccer team has been attacked by who else but Donald Trump. And he says the team is headed by a radical group of leftist maniacs.
Jude, I saw it yesterday. A fellow, Owen Jones, he's a columnist. He's a sort of left-wing columnist. And he said exactly what I thought originally. It was a piss take. I thought somebody had sort of taken a parody account from Trump and put it out because it was so ridiculous. And so leftist maniacs have taken over. And he says the wee purple-haired girl, that's Megan Rapinoe, I think's her name. Yeah. She's the captain of the team. No, she is the one. Trump issued the American football team. By the way, soccer is big among women. Women's soccer in America is huge.
Yeah,
and it's a big demographic for any president to get all the women. And so, anyway, the women won. I think, as far as I remember, the American women's team won the Olympic gold medal in Brazil and Rio in 2016, and they were invited to the White House. And I have to quote with a woman. Megan Rapinoe, who was the star of the team, and she was also the captain, and apparently she replied, "No fucking way." In other words, no way was she going to Trump.
Yeah.
So, and apparently she was quoted in the press as stating it, and she has been in Trump's sights since. Like, she is a lesbian, and she's very outspoken about rights for minorities. She's also been involved in taking the knee, and she is involved in very much civil liberties, left-wing causes, and she is the ultimate target for the right-wing people like Trump. So there you go.
Yeah, I know that he said that she was, you said, the woman with the purple hair, and he said she played terribly.
And she scored 2 goals.
I heard she scored 2 terrific goals. I didn't see it.
Absolutely, I saw them. I was watching the match. She scored 2 brilliant goals, and she's. But he's saying that woke means you lose.
Yeah,
and actually,
right.
I think the is it the Australian teams in the final? Kind of. But anyway, one of their
Australian Canada, I think it is.
Other teams have taken the knee and they're in the final. But he said woke means you, and he also said that they hadn't taken the knee for the national anthem. They hadn't. This is all. You can see right away with this. What do you say? Has this demographic as Jude? He's going for the racists. He's going for the bigots. He's going for the Ku Klux Klan. This is all this. This is red meat to his base.
Anyway, we probably shouldn't be talking about him because he's just a nutter who doesn't hold any election.
Hold on, Jude. He got 75 million votes, and he is now. And if you watch CNN any night of the week, which I do, he is still dominating Republican politics in America. He's still a very influential man.
I think we should stop talking about him, and somebody should do something about him. Well, that sounds very drastic.
That sounds ominous, by the way.
But they should take political action. I mean, this just responding staff. Tell me this, Pat. I know this sounds almost absurd, but what does woke mean?
I take it to mean that you're dead on, though, about all the left-wing causes, and that it's like one of these American phrases, snowflake and gaslighting and all these things that come in. And I'm going, what the hell does all this mean? And wolf or dog whistling and all this sort of stuff. This terminology all came in with sort of social media.
I don't know. What does it stand for? Something or the letter?
Yeah, it stands for this, that you're aware of all this sort of civil rights issues and all this sort of stuff. you know, and left wing causes and dead on, you know, right on politics and so on.
Would you classify then as woke the people we were talking about earlier who would leap on you for saying that you're schizophrenic?
Oh, very much so, yes. You see, Trump, Jude, is without question harking back to the base, you know, the days before political correctness and when you could call black people a certain N word and all that sort of stuff, and you know, you know, and others. And there's and that's the base. Jude, it's very simple. He wants to go back to mum, apple pie, and the picket fence.
Yeah, and him leading the country,
and them and the white person in control.
And you forgot about global warming also. Yeah, well, let's leave him and move to the games themselves. As you say, I was really surprised that the US soccer team only got a bronze medal because they were really terrific. But, you know, teams had form. And
a lot of them are getting old together. Like Megan Rapinoe has got to be well into her 30s.
Yeah.
You know, it's like what I think a lot of the team were the same team as members were that won in 2016. There, you know, it's like remember the Manchester United team had won the European Cup and were relegated in '68 and were relegated about a year later or 2 years later. Like they'd all grown old together, and I think the same's happening with that American team. It's time for a lot of new blood.
Very quickly, Pat, since we're talking about football, I know we haven't it lined up here, but Lionel Messi is leaving Barcelona. Where's he going to go? Do you think?
God knows, Jude. There are all sorts. Barcelona are €1 billion in debt. 1 billion, and their finances are so out of control. They don't know. But hey, Jude, one of the things was Messi in the next what was it? Was it a 3-year contract or a 4-year contract? He was going to earn $500 million, 500 million. He was going to be making something like 11 million a month or something. Jesus, Jude, that is on. And there's no football club in the world that can come up. Anyway, whatever happened, he's basically a free agent. There's all sorts of problems financially. They haven't been able to sign a contract, and I presume here now, somebody like Manchester City, or you know, with their Arab or Middle Eastern oil billionaires in the background, like for 3 years, it would be a massive coup to get Lionel Messi, I say, in the Premier League.
I don't think they could afford him. I really don't think they could afford him. They've just bought, what's his name? The guy that played Gaelic games and was sort of a regular sub. Grealish. And I worked it out. Has a 5-year contract with Man City now, and at the end of that 5 years, he's going to have made £50 million. That's on payments alone, not regardless of advertising, etc.
And all the rest.
I heard him on the radio yesterday describing how he does his hair. And what he puts on first, and then he treats it with, and then he puts on oil, and then a little bit of this, a little bit of amazing. I wonder what Trump would make of him. But Messi, he may have priced himself out of the market, you know. Maybe the Chinese would be interested because they pay most absurd.
Was it Suarez or somebody was out in China, and he was on something like 6 million whatever a month or something.
So maybe that's where he's going to go. He's a good mate of Suarez, anyway. Okay, so let's talk about the fact that China are leading the medals table at the Olympics. How come, I wonder? Why now?
Dude, you know, someone see. Remember one stage the Russians were. You know, it's almost indicative of the sort of the growing status of China.
Exactly.
A couple of years ago, Jude, a Chinese athlete was as rare as hen's teeth. You know, now their gymnasts are dominating that particular section of sport. Their gym, what do you call it? And the pool. I think their divers came first, second, and third in something quite recently. A wee 14-year-old girl also won another competition. She got, I think, a perfect 10. She was brilliant, by the way. And a lot of the field events. Now their runners haven't done so brilliantly, but hey, that's only a matter of time. You know, but you know, and the American, I'd say the American prestige, it must be taking a dent that the Chinese are now, and the Chinese now, in terms of gold medals, they're quite a bit ahead of America. Now, I think overall America has won more medals, and maybe when the track and fields are finished, it might even off a wee bit. But do you see China on top of the podium in terms of medals? You know, and Jude, Well, apparently, I don't know how true this is. The Americans deny it, but they said last year, no, the year before, the Chinese economy, I know the net worth of it passed the economy of America. Now, I don't know how true that is, in terms of exports, imports, production, and all this sort of stuff.
Well,
And they also seem to be flexing their muscles in terms of politics, particularly in regard to Hong Kong and Taipei.
oh yeah, they are the rising force, obviously, and
Yeah,
I think you get American commentators will tell you it's only a question of time till they surpass them if they haven't already. But isn't
yeah,
it interesting that, as you say, that sporting prowess is linked to economic power? And
yeah,
we remember the Cold War when
yeah.
the USSR and America were always locked in a
Always,
battle,
yeah.
and it was seen as
I,
vindicating the way of life of America
exactly,
when their
exactly.
athletes won.
Yeah, yeah.
Remember, also, do you remember the time? What was it? Would it be about 3 or 4 Olympic Games ago that China sent a bunch of athletes and they won everything in sight, and then discovered they were doped to the gills?
That was the one. Sonia Sullivan was passed by 3 metronome running Chinese, and they just ran perfectly as if they were computers or robots. And then after they won the gold medals, I think they won. I don't know if Sonia got a bronze, but anyway, the 3 of them were afterwards. The 3 disappeared, never to be heard of again.
What are you implying there? That
I'm implying very clearly they were up their eyeballs and the drugs, and I think we mentioned this the last day. The coach was an East German who was famous for having more than a passing acquaintance with drug enhancing or performance enhancing drugs.
the thing is, they haven't talked about drugs this time at all. They haven't talked about testing people. Whereas other years, I remember there was a lot of talk about people being tested, but no mention of it this time at all.
No.
Maybe they're trying to give some sort of a headwind to the games, because the games got off to a very shaky start because 80% or something like that of the Japanese population didn't want them. But I was reading an article today which was saying, well, it was seen as the worst possible games and shouldn't have had it, shouldn't have people come from all around the world, spread infection, etc. And yet athletes hugging each other and so on. And yet the games seem to have been successful. Some of the races in it, and certainly some of the boxing, was very, very good, I thought. Now, I would say overall I wasn't as interested, but I wouldn't put that down to the games. It's just that I haven't as much interest as I had. But would you say they were a success?
Jude, I was watching there the Norwegian guy, Karsten Warren, he won the 400 meters. And I was reading a guy in Independent said it as possibly the greatest race ever in Olympic history. He says it was near enough perfection, and the fact that he got under 46 seconds for hurdles. A guy, the American guy behind him, said it's hard to believe that I ran 45 point something and came second. They said it's pushing the human boundaries to an unbelievable level that this young Norwegian has done this.
Well, but wasn't there one of I think it was an American athlete who came in second who complained and said that these people were wearing these crazy spikes that give them terrific bounce and all, and that they shouldn't be doing that. Which was, there was an argument there, but it was sort of undermined by the fact that he had his own version of exactly.
It's like somebody technology. Like you can't compare Jesse Owens with Usain Bolt. Jesse Owens ran in a different type of shoes on a cinder track. These guys are running on these synthetic tracks and all the rest of it. It's a different and so on. But technology's moved on, and I'm sure the guy's complaining simply because maybe his shoes had a different bounce. And
maybe he just wanted to attract attention to the fact that they had.
Come on, Jude. I don't think a pair of shoes is going to make a hell of a lot of difference over 400 meters.
Well, they say, they do say that these sort of carbon thing that they have in them and an awful lot of cushioning, that it does bounce the runner up, gives them a sort of a bounce. In fact, when you wear them first, you feel as if you're on a trampoline or something, and you have to learn how to run with them.
But that's fair enough. But if you, I see in the Tour de France, I'm sure if you got a bike from the 1920s and get one from the 2020s, if you know what I mean. Oh yeah. The carbon and the flight frame and I don't know what and all the rest. I'd say it's probably 50, if not 70% lighter. But that's technology, and it's available to most people out there.
Yeah, yeah, and it's good. It's good to see it. Good to see.
Yeah.
Right. My last item this morning is, I think it's in Irish Times, Catherine Zappone. Did we talk about her before?
No, no, no.
The job, was offered a job to check on human rights or support human rights at the United Nations, I think, on behalf of Ireland. She was getting a mere pittance, £7,000 or something. But it all got tied up with, had the right thing been done? Had there been other candidates? What were the criteria, etc.? Or was it a little job even that was slipped to her by Simon Coveney? And then added to that was her farewell bash, which was held at, what was the name? The hotel is so prestige, I can't even think what it's called.
Let me fill it in for you, Dr. Collins. The Marion Park, I think it is, the Marion Hotel.
Oh, yes, that's your own favorite. You've told me about being there, haven't you? Or... Anyway, you see, I had a really good time there, and there was over 50 of them, and Leo Varadkar dropped in for a while. And complicating things terribly, Ivana Bacik, the Labour candidate who won in Dublin Bay South, she was there for a while too. Now, I find this really interesting because clearly the government, the government, including Micheál Martin, are mired in this because while Micheál Martin wasn't involved in any part of it, he was blindsided, as they say. He went off and did it, and it didn't tell him, it made him look very silly and rather weak. There's the article I read was by Anne Harris. You know, you're familiar with Anne Harris?
That's the one Harris's former wife, isn't it?
That's right. Yes, yes. She writes about it, and she, very interestingly, she manages to make. Well, here's a quotation of one of the things she says. It's not a big leap to deduce that the majority believes this kind of coalition is the only way to avoid a government with Sinn Féin in charge. Because despite the party's unprecedented popularity, many fear the huge Sinn Féin monolith with its populist politics and unabashed support for Venezuela, Cuba, and other dictatorships with no freedom of expression. Now, how would you get there from a bash in that Dublin hotel and Catherine Zappone's job in New York?
Aye. Jude, you know something, that is why so many people are actually going to Sinn Féin. That sort of rubbish that woman's just written. Jude, in other words, this is transference and deflection. Let's stick to the issue here. This is cronyism, Irish style, as it always, jobs for the boys and for the charm circle. They look after each other and all the rest of it. So here, Catherine Zappone was leaving. She was going back to America. In fact, she's living in America now. Again, she is American. So they offered her this job as a special envoy for human rights. They had a going away party for 50, attended by the great and the good, 50 of them, at a time when no way could 50 people go to Holy Communions or confirmations or even, I presume, funerals and so on. And then she was given this job, a nod and a wink. The Taoiseach didn't know about it. Coveney awarded her the job. And Jude, by the way, it's 15 grand a year. Now that sounds like meager, but there's prestige involved, there are expenses involved, and I'm sure you move in the right circles and suddenly you maybe get yourself a little directorship on Google or something, you know, at a couple of $100,000 a year. So there's it's a lot more than just a simple little job. But anyway, all this was going on, and they're, you know, and basically they're all looking after each other. And then it says when the proverbial hit the fan, they were asked, wait a minute, how did 50 people get together at a time when nobody else was allowed on the COVID regulations? And the Attorney General's come out and says, 200 people could meet outdoors. And the hospitality industry, they came out yesterday and said, good merciful Jesus, how come we didn't know about this? So, Jude, David Cullinan of Sinn Féin said, this is retrospective cover for, for what went on. Timmy Dooley of Fianna Fáil, who's hardly Shinner, says pretty much the same, that this whole thing is taking the piss out of ordinary people. So, Jude, you know, Anne Harris and our, you know, and our sort of our paranoia about Sinn Féin should really sort of concentrate on what the ordinary people of this country are seeing and looking at, and saying, look, there's one rule for us and another rule for them.
Well, I think they could have got away with it, maybe. but maybe not. But maybe they could have got away with it if it had been confined simply to Catherine Zappone being given a job, which wasn't costing very much and maybe was doing some service for Ireland. People might say, well, they should have gone through the usual ritual, but sure, there's a lot of red tape in these things. It's only a few bob, and she's a very capable, formidable woman, so she'll probably do some good. But once the background of this bash was revealed, where they were claiming that up to 200 people could attend, and yet the government advice and urgings to the populace was don't do this at all. It was just a classic case of preaching one thing and doing another. And who was it? Did you say that it was the Shinner guy that said it was retrospective?
David Cullinan. He said it's
retrospective. I thought that was very good.
It was actually a very clever thing. I can't remember. He said, did I write it down somewhere? No, I didn't. He said basically it was retrospective cover rolled out to protect the Taoiseach.
Yeah. I think the damage is done. And they've been Leo hasn't spoken at all. Well, I haven't seen him or heard him.
Well, Morning Ireland yesterday, Jude apparently tried to get a spokesman from any party to come on. Nobody would come on. That's always a sign of a government in crisis.
Were they looking for some of the opposition then?
Yeah, they were looking for anybody to come on. No, from the government side. From the government side.
But not from the opposition side.
No. To the opposition would like Sinn Féin, Reddy's position, and so on. But there's nobody from the Green Party, nobody from Fianna Fáil, and nobody from Fine Gael would go on yesterday morning.
Wouldn't it have been interesting if they could have got somebody from Labour?
Well, nobody from Labour would on either, obviously.
You see what I'm getting at?
I see what you're getting at.
And if they'd come on and said how awful, how shocking, and then Ivana Bacik. Somebody said the fragrant Ivana Bacik had been caught. That's a really, really bad bit of luck for her, I think, because she was really being hailed after for so long, not being elected.
But getting back to the Anne Harris thing, you see, that is the sort of line that's spun out by the sort of the establishment here all the time. And see if Sinn Féin get into government and they balls up, I'll be as angry with them as them. But see, I think that the ordinary plain people are sick and tired of all this sort of cronyism that has been going on. Jude, we all knew. I grew up in an era where if you wanted a job as a school teacher, you had to know the certain Fianna Fáil politician and a certain priest. And if you wanted someone else, you had to be a member of the GA and you had to go to the mass every nearly daily communion. And it had nothing to do with your ability, it was who you knew, not what you knew. And Jude, and the Catholic Church was up to its eyeballs on it. Fianna Fáil was up to its eyeballs on it, and the GA, all the triple power of the state, and people got so fed up with the corruption and all that sort of stuff. And now to throw out, that Anne Harris thing, like I'm just amazed that somebody would throw it. The central tenet of this whole thing is cronyism within the establishment, but she throws out the bait. About Sinn Féin. What's that got to do with this on this particular instance?
It's interesting, you see, because she's holding up, Sinn Féin hold themselves up, but she holds up Sinn Féin as being this populist hurricane, as she calls them. And she says it's building this hurricane, and Leo Varadkar is sleepwalking into it, which is an odd way to describe a guy who apparently broke his own advice about attending hillies and bashes. I was at a discussion online yesterday. It was a book club actually, and in the course of it, somewhere or another, we got around to talking a bit about politics. And one of the people in it raised the point that she said that Bernadette Devlin had said, I gathered relatively recently, that if things were run again, she wouldn't support violence. It seemed to suggest she was supporting violence, and that seems a reasonable surmise. I'm not sure. Keep myself safe here, but that she wouldn't, because what happened was that the people who were the kind of revolutionaries who wanted a clean slate, start and do things right, inevitably joined the establishment, and that's what Sinn Féin had done. Now, a little bit to resist that, but I could see what the rest of the people thought. They clearly believed that this was the case. I
Yeah.
thought that was a bit fatalistic, because that would lead you to do nothing, because everything's going to go back to the same. Well, what's your own thoughts on that, Pat?
I'm not sure, like, you see, let me switch it another way. And this is just going through my head. You know this thing about, without, what does Mao Zedong said, without change, there's no progress. You know, unless people sort of, Jude, do we just keep on doing what we're doing? You know, vote Fianna Fáil, vote Fine Gael, and you know, just let that out. Like Sinn Féin, what is the originally? When you think back on the founding of the state, remember they some of the TDs went into Dáil with a gun still under there, and then these are the people then became the souls of respectability, the elder statesmen of our country, and so on. But basically, I'm not sure. I think unless you sort of become a bit radical, everything goes stale. But I mean, I just want to go on some. See, all the time, everybody throws out this thing about Cuba and Venezuela, and I'm not saying they're poster countries for success or anything. But tell me something, if Cuba is such a bad place, why are the Americans blockading it and embargoing it and all the rest? If it's such a minor issue, and it's why is it considered such a threat to the American way of life? And same with Venezuela. The Americans have gone in there and they have embargoed, they have interfered in the political system. They have almost caused the collapse of the system there. They have put up a guy against Maduro, wasn't that the president's name and all? And you know, you sort of say, if these people, why are the capitalist people getting so upset about these countries and interfering? Why did you, if they're such failures, why don't they just let them get on? No embargoes, no interference, and all the rest of it. Let's see how they get on.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I must say I get a bit prickly when I hear that. My son's living in the States, and he, to my embarrassment, tends to speak of the guy who was in charge of Venezuela and who died.
Chavez.
Hugo Chavez. But he tends to use that as if it were a curse word, which dismays me a bit. He would say, "Oh, well, look at all the terrible poverty and the bottom is falling out of the economy and so on." But I mean, Chavez did a lot of good, certainly in the early stages.
But look how much interference there was as well, Jude. The Americans have done, you know, like if the Americans had bought out of Cuba and let Cuba trade like every other, like Spain or like France or all that, the Americans have got a vested interest in ensuring that Cuba doesn't succeed. They've got a vested interest, and they have interfered to ensure that they don't. So, like, my question is, why?
Yeah. Well, it's simply because they're left leaning or communist states, which is holding up a model which is different from theirs, and they want to squash that. Since they've squashed, so to speak, the USSR, they certainly want to squash this. But the thing that really intrigues me is people never, in terms of Cuba, they'll talk about human rights, they'll talk about people who disappear and how you mustn't voice opposition, all this stuff. They don't mention the fact that Cuba had this fantastic medical system.
Health system.
How they did it, I don't know. And it would be wonderful for Ireland, for example, which is trying to set up a really good medical system. The south of Ireland, or the north for that matter, to go and check it out, find out what did they do was right, what did they do that was wrong, and how did they achieve so much. Second thing is, they had an incredible, for South America, or for anywhere, they had an incredibly high literacy rate.
99%. Someone.
So how do they do that? I mean, the people, you don't have that kind of level of literacy in Britain, in the States, in Ireland. So why aren't people humble enough to learn?
Just follow on from what you're saying. Just one of the great things they keep saying about the oppression in Cuba. The highest population of prisoners in the world is in the United States, 22% or something. That's rather good. The Americans have everybody, their own citizens, convinced that oppression only occurs somewhere else.
Yeah. Have you come across a guy called Jordan Peterson?
No.
I think he's a Canadian. He was an academic, but he's a big sort of name. And I just came across him yesterday on YouTube. If you check him out, it'd be interesting to see what you think. But I know that he had a book that I picked up at an airport because I had nothing else to read, and it was half price, called 12 Rules to Live Your Life By. So I said, oh, that's interesting. I'll take that. And I'm always looking to improve myself.
Is he a philosopher or something?
Sort of philosopher. He's certainly very stern views.
I think I saw him on an American TV program. But
yeah, my daughter nearly went nuts when she saw me with the book. She thought it was. She says, "What do you read that disgusting man for?" And I says, "Well, I like to do some of the stuff, and it's quite interesting." She says, "Oh, he's done terrible." I said, "Have you read him?" No, but I don't know what's in there. But he's an interesting guy, and I'm trying to think for the life of me why he's talking about this. Yes, he's quite right wing. And as a result, he really is attracting an awful lot of contempt. And we'll finish with this one, Pat. Now, this is a tricky one. Watch yourself on this because you could get into bother. He refuses to, as a prof, he refuses to use the pronoun to students that they want to be called by. So if they have a trans student, he is a trans student, and the student was, say, a man and now has changed themselves into a woman, he refuses to say she isn't doing too well in her work or whatever. I also read an article the other day where it was in the Irish Times, actually. It was somebody trans, I've forgotten which way they went, but anyway, they went one way or the other, and they're also bisexual. And the report on them consistently referred to them as they and them. This is the one person now. Yeah. It's they and them. So they transitioned last year. Yeah. And it's hard for them. Now they're speaking about this one person. What do you make of that?
Jude, I have an issue with that as well. Look, Jude, if somebody wants to be known as changes from a male to a female and wants to be known as she, I have no problem. If it's the other way around and wants to be known as he, no problem. But see, referring to one individual as them and they, you know, Jude, like that's like with respect, I do think that's taking the piss. You know, I think it's just, you know, I think that's making language meaningless.
Because
Jude, they're not plural for a start. You know, they and them. Like you're Jude Collins, you're him male. My wife is Rosie. That's a she. I don't start referring to you as them and they. You know, Jude, like that's ridiculous.
Well, I'm telling you now, Pat, that is being seen as being as important as acknowledging the fact that they have transitioned and that you refer to them as she.
I am all for the freedom. If anybody you want to transition, and if you feel that you're trapped in a body as a male and you want to be a female, go for it. That is your choice, and I will support you 100%, and vice versa. And I have no problem. And you know, your human rights, get married, do whatever you want. That's you know, as long as you're not hurting anybody, which it applies to male, female, straight, gay, it doesn't matter. But hey, Jude, don't try and tell me that you start having to refer to one person as they and them. That's not, you know.
Well, I'll tell you now, Pat, you're going to get into real bother. Because I'd say inside the next year.
I really don't care. That is a joke that, you know,
I agree with you completely. Yeah. I agree with you completely. It flies totally in the face of any semblance of logic. You know, to refer to one person as plural. It just doesn't make sense. Well, yeah. Well, I was going to make
was it George Orwell? I keep coming back to this. He said, see, when a language stopped to have meaning, society basically stops to have meaning. See, when anything can mean anything, you know, Jude, that we need definitions and we need some sort of conciseness and we need some sort of rules.
The world's gone to the dogs, Pat.
Absolutely.
I think, are we getting old, do you think? Would that be it? No, it couldn't be that.
We could not be.
Still going to the dogs. Still going to the dogs.
Okay, Pat. Good luck.
Okay.
Good luck.